Another interesting thing is what I call the brand effect, and this actually has to do with the power of branding, or the power of the brand to actually stimulate search behavior. So if we looked at the holiday searches for last year, some of the top searches were brand names or site names. Now, it's amazing to me that some people, if they want to go to Amazon.com, they go to Google and they type Amazon.com, and that's how they get there. So, if they want to get to eBay, they go to Yahoo, they type in eBay. There are some people, and I could probably include my dad in this mix, who they barely understand the difference between the URL bar and the search, area. It's sort of like, well, they both look pretty much the same. I put stuff in there, so this is pretty clear when you look at what people are searching for. I mean, all of these you could have gotten to just by, sometimes they're even putting the .com in there, but it's just important to recognize that, because people still think you get to everything through a search engine. Some people actually, I found, don't even have that. Like somehow they set up their browser where there's no URL bar, because you can hide it. And like they don't even know that there is one, right? So they just get to everything through whatever their home page is, which is Yahoo or Google or their ISP's search function. That's how they navigate everywhere. So it's just important to recognize that, because not recognizing it could be a huge opportunity cost. Go ahead.
They're doing it for phonetics. They don't know how to spell. I mean, everything up there they can spell, but certain things people might not know how to spell. Google automatically corrects you.
So yeah, I mean, it could be that, but I don't think it's that, based on the studies I've seen. Now, clearly there are typos that people have all the time, either typos because they mistype or typos because they don't know how to spell. I would hope they know how to spell Sears or Target or eBay, but maybe I'm overestimating the intelligence of the people who are searching. The fact that they do in fact use the Google and Yahoo to get to sites, I guess, proves that I have overestimated their intelligence. There are also a lot of generic searches that go on. So people are searching a lot for brands. They also search a lot for particular generic search queries. Now, I have to admit I was a little surprised that last year that one of the top 10 searches was for tires. Now, I never got tires for Christmas, but apparently I was presenting this information a few months ago, and somebody from a store that carries tires was in the audience. They're like, "Oh no, you kidding? We do Q4 is great for us. We sell a lot of tires during Q4 for Christmas gifts." I'm like, "Okay." It was never on my Christmas gift list. But just important to understand that people search for whatever it is that they want. So there's sort of some ongoing debate within the industry about does size matter, right? The engines actually like to compete on the number of pages they have in the index. But the searchers actually don't really care about the number of pages in an index, or even the number of pages that come up for a particular search result. They rarely get get past the first page. So the fact that there's 2,580,000 results for a search marketing seminar in Google, I mean, that's sort of like their own little muscle flexing that they do in trying to prove how great they are. And the fact that Google says that they have almost twice as many results for the same query, that's just sort of a little bit ridiculous, because most people really are interested in the top 15 or 20 anyway, and as long as they get one that they feel is relevant to them, that's going to provide a good user experience for them, and then they'll come back to the engine. Where that becomes potentially important, size of index, is for really, really obscure searches. So size of index may become more important if you're trying to find collectible thimble manufacturer in Boise, Idaho, and there is one, and Google found it and Yahoo didn't. So the search engine spiders, which go out and collect the information from all the pages, different engines have their spiders at different levels of aggressiveness in trying to find pages and trying to understand them and catalog them, etc. One of the reasons that having 1 million search results for a particular query isn't really important is people rarely scan and interact beyond the top 3, 4, or 5 listings unless they're really sort of skimming for something unique. We did a study. We co-sponsored it with a company called Enquiro, and iTools was the vendor, where we had about 60 people go through and do a search on Google. We did Google because they're currently the biggest, and we wanted to see, where do their eyes go? What do people look at? Now, we came up, the result essentially here was that we defined the golden triangle, which is that upper left, triangular area, the upper left quadrant, which clearly gets the vast majority of eye activity. That's where people are scanning. So that iTools allows it's a process by which they can watch people's eye behavior. So I think we've gone slightly past 10:30. So why don't we take a 10-minute break? Come back at 10:45. Yep.
How does click data lay over that?
Click data, it matches that almost 100%, right? We actually did the study to sort of validate whether the click data and eye behavior matched up. And the reason we did that was because marketers kept asking us about the branding impact of search, right? So they were like, well, will they still see me even if they don't click on me? They were sort of asking usually about the right rail. So do I get a branding impact of being there in that right rail? And you can see that, sure, the very top of the right rail gets some eye attention, but beyond that, it pretty much disappears. So there's not a lot of branding impact from being down there. So for the marketers who are sort of trying to ask the question, am I getting free branding impact even though I'm not getting a lot of clicks at the lower positions? Well, the answer to the question based on the eye tracking study is you're not getting a lot of branding out of it either, because the people's eyes are never making it there. They're scanning so heavily in the same areas that they click, which sort of is what would make sense. So it seemed like a no-brainer study, but it was a great validation because it totally matches up where you see all the click volume coming against where the eye activity is. And there's a full study actually that's 26 pages long that shows the particular scanning behavior, the way that people are isolating the keywords that resonate with the individual searches that they did, etc. So we actually sell the study because it's so in depth, but that's the stuff that we release publicly. So the organic, today we're going to talk primarily about organic search, and we'll talk more about the specifics from a tactical and strategic perspective for paid tomorrow. Today we're going to cover both strategic and tactical issues with respect to organic SEO. So organic search results appear primarily based on a spider, a search engine spider, or crawler, or robot visiting your site. And what that spider or robot does is it acts basically just the same way that a human would, except it doesn't see the images in the same way that a human would, but it basically looks at your site, looks at the content on your site. So the other way that you might show up in the algorithmic or organic search results would be from having been in a directory. So the directory that most people think of, Yahoo used to be much more of a directory and much less of a search engine. So there's actually a hierarchy that most people don't even notice anymore, but you can, because it's so far down the page, but you can actually find hundreds of thousands of sites in Yahoo just by following a directory structure. You pick, computers, and then you pick desktop computers, and then you pick Boise, Idaho desktop computers, and then you continue to drill down. So they've got this hierarchy. So most people don't use that directory hierarchy, but often when you do a search, the search engines will actually pull from the directory hierarchy in addition to the spider-based results to create a results page. That becomes particularly important in Google because one of the directories that Google pulls upon is a directory called the Open Directory, or dmoz.org, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The job that all of you have really is to make your site search engine friendly. What you want to do is you want to make it so that it's easy for the search engine spiders to know about your site, learn what content your site has on it, and actually then grade and rank your content in relation to all the other content that's sitting in that huge database of all the other sites that the search engine has visited. The way I like to think about organic SEO, and unfortunately this is bad news for some people, is you either belong there or you don't, right? If you were to sort of ask people, do we belong in that search result for that keyword, or is there somebody else out there that has better content, is more reputable, etc.? If you really don't belong there, then no matter what you do, you're not going to be in those results long term. You can use all sorts of what are called black hat techniques to sort of fool the search engine into thinking that you're in fact more relevant than you are. But every 4 to 6 months, the search engine figures out what black hat techniques are being used, and they sort of shake the index, and then those sites that don't belong there fall out. So from a SEO perspective, really your task is very similar back to the concept of PR, right? If you belong there, if you are a reputable company that has great information about the topic, and you do in fact belong there, if you were to just ask 100 people, who belongs there for this, then you can do a really good job with SEO, because your job at that point is eliminating the hurdles that are getting in the way of the search engine recognizing that you do in fact belong there. So if you belong there but you're not there now, that means you probably did something wrong. If you don't belong there, it takes a tremendous amount of energy to sort of get yourself to the point where you can convince a search engine that you belong there. Now that said, you may be able to improve what you've got to the point where now you do belong there. And at that point, you've sort of, it'd be sort of like improving the stories that you pitch to the press in PR, right? So as you improve the stories that you pitch to the reporters, you have a better chance of showing up in newspapers and magazines.